All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the RevFit How to Dominate Your Deadlift webinar. Just do me one favor and let me know if you can see my screen, and we'll get started if you can, okay? You should be able to see the slides. If you can't, let me know. So somebody start saying yes or no. There's a question and answer box. Cool, thanks, Anthony. All right, sweet. Okay, everyone's saying yes. Sean's saying yes or no. It can only be one or the other, Sean. You're going to pay for that the next day I see you. Okay, guys, let's crack into this. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people joining us as we go on, but look, let's not worry about them. You guys are here, so let's do it. So the seminar is about how to dominate your deadlift and add 10 to 20% to your PR. I'm probably one of the people who hates deadlifting most in the world. I genuinely can't stand it. I hate everything about it. I hate the training. I don't like getting set up for it. I don't feel comfortable deadlifting. It's just not something I like, to be honest. By the time I'm in a powerlifting competition and it gets to the deadlift, I just want to go home, which makes me the perfect person to talk to you about it because I've had to fight and claw with my fingernails to get every kilo I have onto my lift. So basically, what we're going to do today is talk about the explanation purpose of deadlifting, hinge patterns versus squat patterns, deadlift pre-screening, so how to see whether you're fit to deadlift or not, setting up the correct way or the right way, start position mistakes, pumping the bar and firing your lats up, training the lift, and then troubleshooting. Okay, so we'll just dig straight into it, and anytime you have any questions or anything like that, just pop them in the box, and I'll either answer it as I go or we'll hang on till the end for them. So what is a deadlift? Really simply and straightforward, it's a full body compound lift targeting the most powerful muscles in your body. Okay, so that's your glutes, that's your hamstrings, your lats, your lower back, your core, your grip. Everything from the base of your neck to the top of your heels is going to be working damn hard when you deadlift. So, from that perspective, it's an amazing muscle builder. Okay, like anything you can do to build a better supporting structure, so build your back thicker and stronger, will have incredible carryover to every other lift you do. Even something as simple as a bicep curl will improve if your deadlift goes up. The reason for that is when you stand up tall with a barbell in your hands, you need a very strong upper back and lower back to support that weight and not have it pull you forwards. So one of the quickest ways to increase your barbell curl strength is to get your deadlift stronger. When it comes to you know doing the whole playground bragging thing, if my dad is stronger than your dad, it's an awesome benchmark. You know, it's one of those things where you can't really fake it. You've either got it or you haven't. Some people are going to be naturally predisposed to deadlifting. That's fine. If you've got long arms, big hands, and short legs, you're rocking. You're going to kick some ass. If you're like me and you've got short legs, short arms, and tiny hands, you're going to have to fight a little bit harder. But that doesn't matter because at the end of the day, you can still get your deadlift stronger. There's no excuse for having a weak deadlift unless you're an absolute pussy. And I really hope there's no pussies on this. Anthony has a quick question. Does it affect your central nervous system? He's read that it can fry. It would fry in inverted commas. Okay, so anything you do is going to affect your central nervous system. Your central nervous system is like the governor of movement. The reason the deadlift can fry, you can't really see me do the bunny ears thing, but I am doing it here. The reason the deadlift fries your CNS is because it's such a massive movement, because it takes in everything from your traps to your lats to your lower back to your glutes to your hams, quads, core, forearms, grip. Everything is working super hard in it. That means there's a much greater stimulation when it comes to motor unit recruitment. The more motor units you fire, the harder your central nervous system has to work, which then leads to the potential to overtrain or as you said, Anthony, fry it. Which is why you have to cycle deadlift training quite carefully, and we're going to talk about that as we go on. But Anto, since you're training in the gym, you know what our last cycle was like: heavy deadlifts and light rack or heavy rack pulls and light deadlifts off the floor. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about. And then something that kind of came up a couple of weeks ago at the RevFit Strength Camp weekend was when it comes to deadlifting, it's really just fighting tooth and nail with gravity to pick a heavy weight up off the floor. There's a very particular mindset that goes into deadlifting. I'd use the word dogged. resilient, or you just have to be a fucking prick to the weight. Okay, you've really got to just be an absolute jackass and not give up on it. If a deadlift comes up and it feels easy, chances are it's just too light and it's not at your max. I'm not sure if Colum's on this or not, or whether he's coaching. Colum, if you are, say hi. But a couple of weeks ago at the strength camp weekend, he started working up to a couple of new PRs. He hit a 180, went to 190. He'd never pulled over, I think, 180 beforehand. So he went 185, 190. And I was like, dude, you've got to try the 200 for me. And, he just wasn't mentally there yet for it. But he's pulled it now since because he knows he can do it. So when it comes to deadlifting, one of the most important things you can do is just be an absolute dickhead. Like, you have to fight like a dog to get the weight sometimes. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with struggling when you're lifting. But you don't want to do it too frequently because you obviously then run the risk of frying your central nervous system. So, what the hell is a hip hinge versus a knee hinge or knee dominant movement? So as you can see in these squat and deadlift pictures, which I'm pretty sure come from Starting Strength, they're completely different movements. So a deadlift is absolutely not a squat. All through life, we've been told, if you want to be safe, you've got to pick stuff up with your leg. When in reality, it's probably the worst thing you can possibly do. The reason for that is it throws you out of position when load gets heavy, but we'll touch on to that when we're talking about deadlift technique later on. So for now, what you need to remember is the deadlift is not a squat. And trying to lift with your legs is wrong. Trying to lift with your legs is dangerous. And most of the things you've heard about lifting stuff up is actually wrong. So let's just examine these two diagrams. First guy, the weight's centered over his foot, but his hips are lower. And as a result, he's got a different shin angle. Okay, so his knee is slightly forward of his toes. As a random aside, it's perfectly okay to let your knees get in front of your toes. Anyone who says differently is lying to you. So the difference here with this guy is that his shins are much more vertical. His shoulders are pretty much directly over the center of the bar, and the hips are a bit higher. So the legs aren't fully straight, but the hips are higher, which still will facilitate some quad involvement and leg drive to get the bar off the floor. But it just means he's not going to get pulled forwards and pulled out of the way. When I show you the videos later on, you're going to understand exactly what I mean. Okay, let's pause for a couple of questions. So, Christopher, when you say you don't want to deadlift too frequently, how often, and how often would you personally? Okay, so this, Christopher, is really dependent on who you are, what your training is like, and what your injury history is like. So if you're the sort of guy who can pull quite frequently, you're more likely to be like more beginner intermediate lifter. When you get strong and when you're more and more experienced, the effort your body has to go through to pull heavy deadlifts frequently will absolutely fry you. Now theoretically, you could deadlift every single day of the week, but you'd have to manage your load. You couldn't possibly go above 80 or 90% every day and survive. So the question isn't as simple as, how often should I deadlift? It's how often should I deadlift, at what stage of my training career, and what are the appropriate loads during that. So as a general rule, once a week, pulling in the 80 to 90% range and not killing yourself is probably going to work okay. Every 3 or 4 weeks, you probably want to back the weight off and have a mini deload. And then maybe follow up with some extra hamstring assistance on your squat day. What we've been doing for the last while, Chris, is like deadlifting really super heavy up to a max out of the rack 1 week, alternating with some lighter speed pulls off the floor the second week, and then hammering some front squats or some pause squats beforehand just to improve leg drive and get the bar moving. Okay, so hopefully that helps, man. If you have any more questions, just come back to me on it. Dean is asking a question. Do you recommend using straps? I have an old hand injury and sometimes I feel my grip stops me just because I can't hold the bar, but I do them with 160 upwards reasonably comfortably. Okay, so my take on using straps is this. If you can't hold on to the bar, don't let the biggest muscles and strongest muscles in your body suffer because your tiny little grip is shit. So basically, use straps if you need to. I would say long term, you're better off getting away from them. So what I do if I was you, Dean, is hit some deadlifts, put on straps if you need to, and then work your grip hard afterwards. So something like a double overhand barbell hold, which is literally just standing there with the bar in your hands for 15 to 30 seconds for 3 sets with the heaviest weight you can manage while staying in that time zone at the end of every deadlift workout would be a really good starting point. I've seen people, Diane is one especially, who trains in my gym. Her grip was awful. She couldn't hold on to 100 kilos. Within 3 or 4 weeks of doing the double hand holds, she was up pulling 120 and holding on to it without any hassle at all. So, train your grip, but don't let a bad grip affect your deadlift. Okay, hopefully that makes sense, man. Also, make sure you're mixing your grip and you're wearing chalk on your hands, because if you're not, both of those are going to screw you over. James, external cueing for teaching the hip hinge. Okay, that's a tough one to explain over webinar, James. But basically, what I tell someone to do is stick their ass back as far as they can, stick their chin out as far as they can, feel that hamstring tension, and just work from there. In that scenario as well, sometimes somebody will go through a squat pattern, and I'll literally just get my hand, if you follow the arrow, and push their knees back towards this grey line, which lifts their hip up and puts them closer to this position. So a lot of the time, you've actually got to get hands-on with it. And so, is there a particular grip? Yeah, man. One hand over, one hand under is where you're going to pull your strongest weights. Pulling double overhand is cool, and it'll improve your grip strength. But again, you don't want to let your strength suffer because of it. Michael, when the bar gets heavy, people's hips shoot up and lumbar flexes a little. Is that back strength or leg strength? Michael, it's pretty much bad starting position, and that's going to be like 3 or 4 slides in. I'll explain exactly why that's happening to you then. Mark, can I go into lever length position for the bigger than average person? Doing rack pulls for a while, but my back position off the floor never looks right. Okay, so Mark, Mark, I think we said you need to sumo deadlift if I remember correctly. Mark's got really long legs, which means when he gets into a start position, the only way he can do it while still keeping his shoulders over the bar is that his back ends up damn near parallel to the floor. So that's not really ideal for somebody. For someone who's got exceptionally long legs and who it becomes a real issue for, I would say probably do rack pulls or sumo deadlifts. Not everyone is built to deadlift. Everyone should be able to deadlift safely and effectively from the floor, but sometimes you've just got to work around the way you're built. Lindsay, should you alternate your grip? Yeah, probably to ensure balanced development. But if you're doing everything else right in your training, I don't think it's going to be an issue. Everyone I know who deadlifts heavy pulls with the same grip for 10, 15 years in a row. It's probably not optimal. Pulling mixed grip probably isn't optimal from a 100% health standpoint anyway. But when it comes to like long-term deadlift strength and back and glute and ham development, I think sticking with the alternate grip on the same side makes sense. Al's asking, and this is the last question I'm going to take now before moving on. Al's asking, eyes up or down, or does head position matter? So, Al, here's what you do. Look to your left without moving your head. Look to your right without moving your head, and then look up without moving your head. What you notice there? Your head position doesn't change. Your head position shouldn't change because at all times you want this really nice neutral spinal alignment. Where people get fucked up is that they see this position and they see people's eyes like tending towards the floor if you were to look straight ahead, which isn't necessarily what you want to do because your body's always going to follow your head. So what I always cue my guys to do is pick a spot on the horizon, stick to it with their eyes, and don't deviate from it. So that means they're neither looking up nor down. They're looking with their eyes and not with their head. Head position. When it comes to max lifting, chances are your head position is going to lift up a little bit because driving your head back into your traps is a really potent way of getting the bar moving. From a safety and perfection standpoint, it's probably not perfect, but sometimes when you're lifting max weights, things will get ugly. Ian, okay, so really quickly, upper back rounds when I'm going heavy, so my shoulders look some forward. Is it a big issue? My lower back is still straight and fixed. Ian, if I remember correctly, there's some serious structural issues going on there for you. So, unless you're doing something to improve that from a structural standpoint, there's not much you can do about it. I don't think it's too big of an issue. If you look at someone like Konstantinov, he pulls with a very rounded upper back and a very tight lower back. So the thoracic vertebrae are always going to resist and tolerate flexion, extension, and rotation a little bit better than the lumbar vertebrae. So you're probably okay that way. And I know you've been pulling long enough for it not really to be an issue for you. So look, in an ideal world, you'd be able to extend your back and hold it. But right now, I don't think it's going to matter too much. So on we go. Again, guys, just keep asking questions and I'll pop into them every now and again. Pre-screening. So, you know, I know there's a lot of trainers on this. So this is particularly important for you guys. For non-trainers and for people who are just training with their mates, this is a nice little way to figure out if you can effectively deadlift safely or not. So what you've got here is the ASLR test, so the asymmetric single leg raise test, as used in the functional movement screen by Greg Cook. So the thing Cook talks about is that proximal stability leads to distal mobility. And what that means is that if your core is strong and stable, your extremities, your arms and legs can move safely without like a huge injury risk. So the easiest way to figure out whether you can do that or not is lie flat on your back, head down, shoulders down, hands down, toes pointing straight up, and just try and bring one leg up as far as you can. So what you've got in this position is like a single leg hinge. So the minimum standard you want to have is if you were to draw a line straight up from your knee, would your heel pass through it? So if my knee was here, very clearly my heel has breached that line. The gold standard is picking your point midway between your hip and your knee and trying to breach that line there with your heel. And again, I've done it successfully. Let me just pop into YouTube really quickly and I'll show it to you in action. So here we go. Can you guys do me a favor really quickly and tell me if you can see this video playing or not, okay? Okay, cool. Thanks, lads. You can see it. So here's what you're looking at. Does my leg pass through the range of my knee? Quite simple and quite easy, right? So that's the test. Lie down. Can you lift your legs straight up, or do you make a mess of YouTube? Lie down, lift your legs straight up, see what happens. Okay, let's go back to the slides. With this test here, usually what's happening is like a lack of core stability or a lack of core recruitment. So you can have a very strong core, but it doesn't always necessarily mean it's working effectively. Okay, I know that sounds a little bit weird, but a strong core doesn't necessarily mean a functioning core. So, you know, if this is a test, is a problem for you, you're probably going to round your lower back as you start to deadlift. When it comes to correcting this sort of stuff, taking this ASLR and getting both legs straight up in the air. So in this video, my right leg would come up to match my left. Holding one leg here as the other lowers down and returns in like a pendulum motion is a really nice way to start to strengthen up your core in like a relevant position and a relevant demand to the deadlift. So like sets of 10 on each leg. Whenever this leg, the up leg, starts to track downwards, that's when the moving leg needs to go back. So it might end up you're doing like half range leg lifts. You know, that's fine. It's progress over time you're looking for. So let's push on and let's start talking about setting up correctly. But first, two questions. Okay, Anthony's asking, is that with a completely flat lumbar spine or natural arch? Natural arch, man. When you're deadlifting, you want a neutral lower back. When you're lying down, you want a neutral lower back. Taking it the other way is just taking into deflection, which you definitely don't want. For something like a dead bug, I'll usually cue people to go into flat back purely so they have something to push against. But for this test here, keeping an arch, not allowing your lower back to arch, but keeping a naturally arched lower back is cool. James Murray, is it okay to do deadlifts and blocks if you struggle to get into the bottom position, or stick like sumo like he's been doing? Yeah, man, we're going to talk about it later on, but deadlifts from blocks or rack pulls are a perfectly acceptable substitute until you can start pulling off the floor. I've had guys pulling in the gym off of the rack for like 4 to 5, maybe even 6 months, who are only now starting to get off the floor, but as a result, they're hitting huge PRs because they've got the back, leg, and hand strength to deal with it. So yeah, for sure, if you want to pull off of the rack for whatever issue, that's cool. Now, setting up correctly. So like I said, the deadlift is not a squat. Again, I just want to ram that home. So what you're looking for is to have your shins vertical or close to it, your shoulders packed down, so not back. You're not looking to squeeze them together because your little thoracic extenders and your scapular retractors are not going to be strong enough to hold them packed when you are deadlifting heavy. So shoulders down, think of firing your lats, and then no matter how tight your lats are, pull them even tighter. I've got to thank Darren Kennedy for that one, for just ramming home how important it is. Because I spent a good while doing a lot of cleans and a lot of power cleans, and as a result, my start position changed quite dramatically, and I forgot the importance of taking my shoulders and jamming them down into my back pockets. So credit to Daz for that one. What you need to do is make sure your shins are vertical, your shoulders are down, and your lats are tighter. Again, we're going to go through a video of this in a minute, but we're going to hit to what not to do first. So when you set up correctly in this position, your shoulders are over the bar, you've all the slack taken out of the bar, and as you stand up, your hips just pop through. So setup position mistakes. So setting up too close to the bar, setting up too far away, hips too high, hips too long, doing a Goldilocks, and then starting from a soft position. So when I say setting up too close to the bar, what I mean is people have this obsession with getting their shins against the bar when they deadlift. And that's okay. Like at some point you want to keep the bar close to you, but you don't want to set up with the bar against your shins. The reason for that is because when you set up with the bar on your shins, you can't extend back. You can't put your glutes into the movement and your hamstrings, because if you did, you just fall over backwards. So as a result, people start with the bar against their shins. They just bend over and grab the bar, and all of a sudden they lose any sort of tightness through the lower back, and just start from a really disadvantageous position. The other thing with that is, a deadlift does require leg drive off the floor. So getting the bar off the floor, the first 2 to 3 inches, maybe even as much as 6, does come from the quads driving off. So if the quads are here, they're already out of the movement. Now all you've got is like this manky lower back fulcrum point to hopefully stand up with the weight. Conscious stiff leg deadlifts off the floor can be a really good training tool when it comes to lower back hamstring strength. But as a way to pull max weights, it really doesn't make that much sense. So what you're looking at here is the hips are almost fully extended. So how are you going to lift the bar off the floor if that happens already? So Goldilocks in this position is not too far away, not too close, hips not too high, hips not too low, not too hot, not too cold, just right. So there's a lot of questions still coming. I'll get to them in a second once we go through the next couple of slides. So here's the next problem, and I can't remember who this was. Scrolling back, Michael, I think this is your one. You said a lot of people will start with their where is it gone? Okay, Michael, you said when the bar gets heavy, people's hips shoot up and their lumbar flexes. Is it back strength or is it leg strength? And I said to you, it's set up. The reason it's set up is because when you're in this position squatting down, your shins get pushed forward to this big wide angle. And the bar is never going to move until your shins are completely vertical. So the shins have to move from angled to vertical as the bar moves off the floor. There's only one way for that to happen. The bar can't possibly stay out in front of you, because if it did, it would pull you over and you'd face plant on the floor. So as a result, what happens is the hips shoot up, the bar finds its way back to the shins, and for most people, that means the counter reaction is that their chest drops and their lower back rounds. The follow on from that then is that they brought the bar up above their knees. But the problem is, once it's above their knees, because their back is rounded out and their hips are already fully extended, they can't lock it out. So the bar gets above your knees with your lumbar spine rounded. In this position, my hips are pretty much fully extended, so my glutes and hamstrings are finished doing the work. All I've got then to finish the stand up is my erectors, which don't do a very good job of lifting weights. Plus, you don't really want to force them into that position either, because you're going to cream them pretty fast. So let's push on. When it comes to starting correct, you want to have a mixed grip. So one hand over, one hand under. You know what? Actually, let's take a short break and let's do some questions. Guys, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. So Sean Murphy is asking, hi Sean, can you recommend any exercises to improve the upper portion of the lift from knee level to lockout? Sean, I think I just answered that question inadvertently for you, bro. The best thing to do is look at your setup position and have a look and see what happens as you break the bar off the floor. Because if your knees shoot backwards and the bar drifts in, then the problem isn't your lockout. The problem is you've started in the wrong position. If it really is genuinely a lockout position where you get the bar above your knees, but you can't force your hips through with a neutral lower back, heavy rack pulls done correctly, a lot of heavy rows as well. Luke, what about bending the bar and showing your chest off? So I think this comes to the question of setting up. The showing your chest off thing is a good cue for somebody. The only risk is that you end up extending your upper back when you do that. And if you overextend your upper back or like consciously extend your T spine, that's going to get broken down as the bar moves off the floor, and then you end up pulling yourself out of position. So, like once you've started your deadlift, your back position shouldn't move. Your back should stay locked in. Um, and when you're talking about bending the bar here, what that really is just using your hands to fire your lats up to drop your shoulders down. Um, so when it comes to bending the bar, yeah, for sure. Like if thinking about bending the bar helps you get your lats on fire and helps you stabilize your back that way, go for it. But just be conscious that it's you using an external cue rather than being able to consciously fire your lats on purpose when you need to. Darren is asking, what's the best approach to take after hitting 200 kilos? Stick with the heavy work or take a break and work on assistance for a while? This is one of those, it depends, bro. So I'm assuming you've worked really hard. 200 kilos is a big milestone for you. I still remember hitting my first one and I was amazingly stoked to get it. So if your first, like, okay, I'm going to work off the basis. You've worked really hard for a few months. You've been training really heavy and you maxed out and hit 200 kilos. So where do you go now? Like any training cycle, the only place to go after you've got a peak is a trough. So like, what's on the other side of the peak of a mountain? A downward slope. It's the same with deadlifting. If you push too hard for too long, we come back to this frying the nervous system thing. So depending on what you've done, you've got two options. Number one, you can back off a little bit, focus on speed pulls, focus on some paused front squats, some paused back squats to improve leg drive, and then hammer the assistance work. I haven't met a single person whose hamstrings are too strong for deadlifts. Almost everyone I meet needs more glute and ham strength. I was talking to a guy this morning. He's a 203 kilo high bar back squatter. He's got 140 kilo clean. I think he's snatched like 100 plus. And the dude can't do one glute ham raise with good form or good technique. For me, that's staggering. Like that's absolutely mind bending how that can happen. Now, like I understand people don't focus on hamstring strength, so obviously it becomes an issue. But being good at glute ham raise is like the number one thing you need to look at when it comes to deadlifting, especially if your problem is in the mid range, from a couple of inches below your knees to a couple of inches above your knees. It'll literally change your life if you get stronger on those. You got to remember two things on the assistance work as well. When it comes to your hamstrings and your glutes, your hamstrings do two things. They're synergistic hip extensors, so they help straighten your legs, or sorry, they help straighten your hips or fire your hips through, but they're also leg flexors, so they curl your leg around. So they've got like this kind of duality, two purposes. It'd be foolish to ignore one of them just because it's not cool or sexy. So nobody likes leg curls. Nobody really talks about glute ham raises, but they're a very efficient and effective way to add some extra hamstring strength in. Hugh Manning is asking, deadlifting in only shoes, should you set up closer to the bar or would you recommend flat shoes always? Hugh, I got to say flat shoes always, man. The elevated heel is just going to kick you into this position here where you're chasing the bar. A good deadlift has you pulling off your heels and kind of pulling back into the bar, whereas doing that in weightlifting shoes is going to kick you forwards. Most of the best guys in the world pull flat shoes. That should tell you everything you need to know about it. Michael, the bar, yeah, thanks, bro. Michael said, thanks. The bar won't move until the shins start, or until the shins are vertical. Is worth listening for alone. Yeah, thanks, mate. That's really, to be honest, it's the biggest thing most people miss. Anthony's asking, can you recommend a core conditioning workout at home that somebody could perform to help with deadlift performance? So those ASLRs, the asymmetric single leg raise, starting with, again, both feet directly vertical, one leg stays, one leg comes down and comes back, it comes down and comes back 10 times, switch legs, it comes down and come back, come down and come back 10 times. It's a really good starting point for that. When you can do like 50 to 100 reps on the minute every, like, so basically 10 and 10, and then in 60 seconds time go again. If you can do 100 of those, like 100 on each side, chances are your core is going to be strong enough to deadlift. And again, it's not just about core strength; it's also about core recruitment. And this is where this test becomes very valuable. Darren, you got 205. Awesome, bro. Don Norton is asking, all the way from Galway, what good deadlift programs would you recommend? We're going to dig into that in a while, where I start talking about some of the programming I've used and stuff I enjoy. The Brad Gillingham deadlift cycle is incredible. It's probably the one I go back to again and again, and I always get good gains out of it. A lot of people are doing the Ed Cohn, Mark Filippi deadlift routine now as well. I got some great gains off of that, but I absolutely blew up in week 8. So Cohn Filippi is another great. That's Phillipi, I think. Google will get you there. Is an amazing deadlift program, but it asks you to work off a projected max. If I was going to do it, I'd actually put in my current max and work off it that way. John, should you need to reset your starting position between reps? John, you're going to see in the video now in a couple of slides time where we pump the bar to reset, and that should answer that one for you. Lloyd is asking, do snatch grip or clean grip variations have any benefit for non-Oli lifters? Would they be worth integrating as a variant for everyone? I think a clean grip deadlift is just about useless for anything other than improving your starting position in a clean. The snatch grip deadlift, on the other hand, is fucking amazing. It's probably my most hated deadlift variant, which means it's probably the most valuable as well. The reason for that is, like, the dynamics of a snatch grip deadlift are such that because your hips are starting low and because your grip is starting wide, when you push off the floor, your hips are going to lift. That's just the way it is. So for most people, when they're deadlifting normally, leg drive will get them to like the first 4 to 6 inches, so maybe to the middle of their shin. With the snatch grip deadlifts, or if you're like a complete sick bastard, snatch grip deadlift standing on a plate, the bar is going to get a lot less high from the leg drive, and then the hamstrings and glutes are going to end up having to do a lot more work. So at the moment, I'm doing a lot of elevated snatch grip deadlifts standing on like a 4-inch platform, which basically puts my toes almost under the bar. So as soon as I straighten my legs, the bar is only, it's only about 3 or 4 inches above my shin, above my foot. And then my hamstrings or glutes are forced to work really hard to finish it off. So yeah, I think snatch grip deadlifts and elevated snatch grip deadlifts are incredible variations that are incredibly beneficial for people, assuming you can hold a good position. Don's coming back again with asking about kettlebell swings before deadlift practice. So I'm going to answer Don's question, James' question, and then going to move on again. Don, I don't like kettlebell swings before deadlift practice because they're slightly different movement patterns. So where are we at on the slides? So like this is probably pretty close to a swing. Like obviously my back would be tighter, my lats would be tighter. So the swing is like a really pure hip hinge. The deadlift is slightly closer. Like it's almost midway between a pure hip hinge and a pure squat. So obviously, like I know you'd never swing like this. You'd probably swing a lot closer to this position, just with a better back angle, obviously. So I'd avoid them for that reason. I think if you're going to do some things to fire yourself up before deadlifting, some hang cleans or something like that are probably more beneficial. James, what's your opinion on using trap bar for deadlifts? He finds it easier to coach bigger groups using a trap bar. Okay, I hate the trap bar. Like, I really fucking hate it. And I hate it because people just screw it up. Okay. Trap bar is brilliant. It's a great tool to use, but it's only a tool. And the reason why I don't like it is because most people turn it into a squat. So if you watch, like next time your group's deadlifting, just check them out. So with the trap bar, For those of you who don't know it, you might also call it a hex bar as well. With a trap bar, you've obviously got like slightly elevated handles, which makes it closer to a rack pull, which means that it's a easier lift for most people to do because they can get into the position easier. But you don't have to worry about sitting back into it like this. Instead, you can kind of turn it into that really shitty squat position here. And then it just turns into like a half squat or a 3/4 squat. Um, so most people aren't doing it right. They're turning it into like an ego lift rather than a deadlift style lift. If you can coach somebody, again, usually by just pushing their knees back a little bit, which will elevate their hips, into doing it properly, it's an absolutely rock solid movement. But as an assistance movement for the deadlift, I think it's pretty much useless. That's just my opinion. I don't know anyone who pulls big that uses them regularly. So, I mean, take that for what it's worth. So, setting up correctly. Obviously, we said we'll use a mixed grip. We'll pump the bar and fire the lats, flex the core, screw the feet into the floor. And the lack of any eccentric makes your life difficult. So, the unique characteristic here of deadlifting that benching and squatting don't have is that in a squat or in a bench press, you start in your strongest position. So you're standing up tall, you lower yourself into the hole, you get back up again. With a bench press, you start with the bar at arm's length, you lower it to your chest, you push it back up again. Imagine if instead you had to start the bench press at the bottom, or you had to start your squat at the bottom. Like, straight away that would make it really, really, really freaking difficult. Because you have no stretch reflex, you don't have any sort of balance synchronization on your way down. So the lack of an eccentric or lowering portion on a deadlift makes your life really, really hard because you've got to start now in the weakest position. And that's why getting all this stuff right is important. So when I say screw your feet into the floor, the easiest way to figure out your deadlift start position from your feet, or at least get a good idea of where you should be, is hang off of a pull-up bar with your feet like a foot above the ground if you can. So jump up and grab it. Let go of the bar, see where your feet land. That's a pretty close approximation of where your feet should be when you deadlift. Okay, guys, I have a couple of questions queued up here. If you want to ask some more, get going on it. And we're going to go through another 2 or 3 slides. Once we get to troubleshooting your deadlift, I'll answer some more questions. So feel free to ask away. So we're screwing your feet into the floor. What I mean is, imagine when you're standing, if you were to look down at your right foot and look down at your left foot, you're trying to screw your right foot clockwise, and you're trying to screw your left foot counterclockwise. Obviously, because you have your weight on your feet, you can't do that. Another way to think about it is spreading them along the floor, like you're trying to rub the soles of your shoe laterally, right and left. When you do that, what you'll feel is that your glutes and hams turn on a little bit more, which then just sets you up nicely to get a bit of extra drive off of the floor. Flexing your core, what I mean by that is just bracing like someone's about to punch you. The reason why you want to flex and not extend is twofold. So number one, when you extend your back or when you pick your chest up tall, so wherever you are right now, okay, guys, sit up tall, put your finger on the bottom of your sternum and put it on the top of your pelvis, okay? Sit up tall, finger on the bottom of your sternum, top of your pelvis. From there, lift your chest up like you're extending your upper back. Okay, what do you notice? The distance between your finger and your hips gets bigger. Okay, so that means your abs or your core is lengthening. What happens when a muscle lengthens? It becomes weaker. You're taking away any sort of contraction from it. So if you're going to start your deadlift by taking away your core stability, that's pretty fucking stupid, right? Like I know hopefully at least 5 or 6 of the 70 of you on this are smart, so you probably understand. But like, guys, please tell me if you understand that or not, because it's super important to realize that extending your core or tightening your middle back isn't the same as flexing your abs. Flexing your abs is basically squeezing them like you're trying to take a big poop, or like somebody's going to punch you in the stomach. So that's the core side of things. From there, pumping the bar and firing the lats. Okay, this is easier to just show rather than talk about. So here we go. Here's one I made earlier. Let's wait for this to load and go HD. So here we go. Getting set up. Bar's a little bit away from the shins. Watch what happens here. I'm going to use the bar. Now this is a light bar. This is only 60 kilos. So it's very hard to sit up against. But what I'm going to do is grab onto it, use the weight of the bar to pull my hips down and tighten my lats, which is effectively generating like a quasi-eccentric for me, which allows me to brace up tight so I can stand up. So watch what happens to the bar as I do that. Little lift and a little lift. Okay, this lift that happens is no way intentional. Okay, I'm not purposely trying to lift the bar off the floor from here to here. That just happens because I'm pulling my hips down and trying to load up as hard as possible. By the way, this is Sarah over here. That's my girlfriend. Wave hello to her right now. She is probably stronger than you are. She squatted 130 kilos a couple of weeks ago, and she's got like a 140, 150 kilo deadlift in her soon as well. She's an absolute machine. And that's my biggest fan. I have a lot of fans, but this one here is my biggest. It's pretty cool as well. So anyway, back to the video. You're going to fire up the lats, pump yourself down, and once you've set, you pull hard. And what you notice is then it's just a straight line up and down. I'm standing up tall, my head's neutral, my ass is squeezed. I'm not leaning back. I'm not looking up. I've just finished the deadlift in a solid position. So again, the knees move forwards a little bit, but they're not going into a squat. And watch what happens as I break the floor. The knees will drift back into the correct position with the shins pretty much vertical. Lats are engaged. The bar moves straight up and back into my hips. Okay. So does that make sense, guys? Okay, guys, you're still with me? Is that setup make sense? Oh man, it's 1005%. Amazing. All right, I'll keep going with this. So I had a couple more videos to show you. Where are they gone? So this is like setting up wrong and setting up wrong on purpose just to show you what happens. So we're back now to setting up with the hips too high. Okay, so hips too high first. In this position, hips are pretty much fully extended. My ass doesn't really have anywhere to go. My lower back is doing a lot of the work here. So that was me setting up too close to the bar. Now I'm setting up a lot further back. So I think I had my toes under the bar now. And I'm doing this because when I squat down, look where my knee angle is and look where my shoulders are. It's not a perfect side view, but they'd effectively be behind the level of the barbell now. So as I stand, watch what happens. My hips will lift, my knees come back, my shoulders drop, and the bar goes in. Okay, I'm exaggerating it a little bit just so you can understand and see. But that is effectively what happens when somebody tries to deadlift with their hips too low. And the important thing to note here is it's usually at this position that the lower back starts to round because the bar is drifted away from them. The shoulders are getting pulled because now the bar is moving backwards instead of up. And you can actually see it move a little bit on me as well, even though that was with 40 kilos and it was already braced pretty hard. In this position, look what's happened. My legs are fully extended. Okay, so that means no more hamstrings. Hamstrings are gone. Glutes may be doing a little bit of work, but from here on in, it's mostly my lower back working to finish the lift, which obviously isn't ideal. And then just a couple more with good setups. Setting up tight, popping through straight, setting up tight. You know somebody's lats, just as a random aside, guys, for those of you coaching. Watch my t-shirt. You know somebody's lats are fired up tight when you get these little crinkles in here. See the change in texture? Or when the t-shirt gets pulled together, it's a really good sign that that your lats are getting fired up. So back to the slides. I'm going to take a couple of questions now. Okay, let me find some. Anthony, in the negative phase of a deadlift, should it be controlled or simply dropped? Will lowering the lift slowly cause injury? Or will lowering the lift too slowly cause injury? So from a training perspective, so let's say you're training for a bigger deadlift, I think lowering the lift under control is probably one of the smartest things you can do. If it's a thing where you're trying to pull like a new 1 rep max on a given day, just letting it come down quickly under control is probably better. So again, it's like all these questions you constantly hear me answering. It's always a gray area. So when is it appropriate to lower it slowly? If they're not your weights and you don't want to break them. But no, seriously, when it comes to lowering the weight slowly, for the trainers on here or for anyone who's done any sort of study around anatomy and physiology, what you'll know is that you're always stronger eccentrically, i.e., you can lower more weight than you can lift. You can lower weight under controls more slowly than you could lift it up, um, and you can always put down weight with better kind of like better positions than you could pick it up, which is kind of significant because what that means is that if you're not lowering the weight under control, you're missing out on potentially 50% of the lift. If you're using your hamstrings as a brake and you're forcing your lower back to contract hard to stabilize the weight on the way down, is that potentially going to strengthen your hamstrings and make you stronger? Absolutely, man. Like, don't overly slow it down. Like, don't go any sort of like 4 or 5 second eccentrics. But taking it down controlled is a savage option when it comes to improving deadlifts. Like, I know Anto trains in my gym, and we've done a lot of tempo work for the last while, which means like we're doing like 3 second or 4 second negatives. The reason we're doing that is because it fires a lot of tension onto the muscle and it allows you to get a much greater training effect with less weight, which is again safer for your body and safer for your joints. What you need to remember, guys, is that your body doesn't know weight, it only knows tension. All things being equal, a heavier weight requires more tension to lift. But if you can actively force tension onto a muscle with a lighter weight, you can still get a really positive training effect. So, John's onto you. His back is fine on the lift, but it tends to get sore on the way back down. Is it a core weakness or is it something else? John, for you, I'd say your hamstring strength is probably still coming up. So on the way down with a deadlift, you've got where's the picture? You've effectively got to hinge back into this position. So if your hamstrings aren't strong enough to support that hinge, your lower back is going to round out. The guy I was talking about earlier who couldn't do a glute ham raise but could squat 203 kilos, he nearly had his hamstrings explode doing some bent over rows today. So he was in something approximating this position, rolling the bar to his stomach. In this position, your hamstrings are acting as a sling to hold you from falling over in tandem with your lower back. And because his hamstrings were so weak that he couldn't do that, they started spazzing out, and he had to take a couple of breaks during the lift. So for you, I think it's probably going to be like half technical, so kind of understanding how to put the bar down safely, and also just bringing your hamstring strength up, which is why we're doing so many stiff leg deadlifts and stuff at the moment. What else have we got? Okay, guys, Chris, Anto, Sean, Don, Lindsay, Anto, James, Pete, thanks for the feedback so far, guys. I really appreciate that you're listening and hopefully getting something out of this. I definitely had a revelation about a week ago when I was over seeing a couple of mates in Barcelona. I realized the one thing I want to do more than anything is just help people. So that's really why I'm doing this. I want to try and help you guys out and make sure you're deadlifting safely and effectively. Hugh has said it makes sense. He's always been setting up, standing up, bracing the core, squeezing the ass, but pumping the bar makes more sense. Brilliant. Dude, give it a go and let me know how it works for you. I don't know if Eric is on this, but if he isn't, he's probably going to watch it back because I know how much he loves me. But a few months ago, when Eric was out writing an article about my gym for his paper, we did some work on his deadlift technique because it was absolutely pig ugly. And the thing he was doing was this knees forward thing. Like, it was just jamming your knees ahead of the bar, setting up too low, thinking you had to squat everything. As soon as we corrected that and got him back to this position, he started hitting PRs immediately. So guys, this is really super, super important to get your start position right. Everything you do in the deadlift is going to be ruined unless you get that right. And chances are you're going to fuck yourself up at some point in time as well. So again, keep the questions coming. We're going to go into troubleshooting in a second and training it. Or training it first and then troubleshooting it. Sorry, my bad. But I'll finish off these questions first from Anthony, Helen, and Don. So, what are my thoughts on RDLs as a hamstring accessory movement? Anto, I really like them. I think they're a really, really good option. And they're really quite a pure hamstring movement. Or, well, I mean, quite a pure hamstring and glute movement. Because you're not like hinging forwards like you would with a traditional stiff leg deadlift, a lot of the pressure is taken off of your lower back, and you can move some really heavy kick-ass weights with them. My last cycle, like I was saying to you guys at the start, I've really shit hamstrings. I can squat almost as much as I can deadlift. I've got leg drive to burn off the floor, but as soon as the weight got to mid shin, I just had nothing to finish. So I've started doing a lot of RDLs to that position. I've also started doing a lot of glute ham raises, and they've made a huge, huge benefit. Um, when it comes to doing them as accessory work, I'd probably stick with about 3 to 5 sets of 8 to 10 reps. Everybody wants to get strong, but nobody wants to get bigger. What moves weight? Muscle moves weight. So if you're not able to break through a PR, one of the best things you can do is look for training that's going to build more muscle on whatever is weakest for you. Helen, okay, so these aren't questions, it's just kudos. Helen, thanks for the positive feedback there. Don, thanks to you as well, bro. I'm really glad you're getting something out of it. And I know I still need to come down to your gym in Galway and do that seminar for you. Hopefully after this you don't just rob all my ideas and go with them. But listen, we'll chat afterwards, mate, and try and get this organized for September if we can. So here's what we're going to talk about when it comes to training deadlifts. Oh, actually, sorry, I've just seen Michael's thing, and I'll touch that first. So Michael said, slightly off topic, but the best thing I ever did for my deadlift strength was to do every set as a cluster. Even when resetting after each rep, if you don't stand up, if you don't stand up each rep, there's potentiation from the first previous rep. Ever notice the second rep is always easier than the first? What Michael is essentially saying here is that when you do a deadlift and when you lower it to the bottom position, like we were talking about with the squat and like the bench press, the lowering creates this eccentric load, which fires up some potentiation, which then activates stretch reflex, which makes the second rep easier. So competition, and when it comes to lifting max weights, one of the best ways to train your deadlift is to do it from a dead position. And that ties in nicely with what we're going to talk about here. So when it comes to deadlifting, the key to hitting PRs is in the name. Don't go mad on reps. It's a deadlift, i.e. it starts from a dead position. It doesn't start from a moving position. It's not a moving lift. It's a deadlift because it's a dead weight sitting on the floor, taunting you, laughing at you, saying you can't lift me. So your job is to go in there, get set up and rip that sucker off the floor. The second rep, it's already moving, so it's going to be easy. A lot of the time people will do that first rep, and on the second one, they'll bounce it and they'll just lift it up to their knees without any hassle, and they end up doing, instead of 5 or 6 reps with something that was almost hard for one, they add 5 kilos onto the bar and they wonder why they can't budget for a single rep. The reason is because you've ended up screwing yourself over by removing it from a deadlift to a moving lift. So don't go mad on reps. Something in the 3 to 5 rep range is usually perfect. We're doing a cycle in my gym at the moment where we've done a week of 8s, a week of 6s, and we're going to do a few weeks of 5. But again, everything we've done before that for the previous 12 weeks has been singles, heavy singles and heavy doubles. So, a little bit of extra repping there isn't going to be a problem for us. So here we go. Start at the start. It's really simple. If your setup position is off, you're going to swim upstream. What I mean by that is if you're setting up in the wrong position and you're struggling to even break it off the floor or you're rounding your back out, then you are doing everything you possibly can to make it harder on yourself. If you don't know what a good start position is, you need somebody to help you with it. We've talked about it on this webinar. Hopefully you've got a sense for what it is now. And by all means, shoot videos of your lifts and then have a look and see what happens. But if you're not setting up correctly, you're pissing into the wind. With regards to where are you failing your lifts? So let's say people generally have 3 positions where they fail. Either off the floor, around the middle of their shin, or just above their knees. If the bar won't budge off the floor, the bar is too heavy. Okay, there's not an assistance movement or there's not a technical improvement in the world that'll make that better. If the bar isn't moving off the floor, it's probably just too heavy and it's probably not a weak point. You're probably just not strong enough. And that's okay. That means you can build up to it. As for starting strength for the first 4 to 6 inches, if you notice that's a big problem for you, front squats, pause squats, and speed pulls are where I'd go with them. So, speed pull is a starting point. because, like we said earlier, you don't have any stretch reflex at the start of a deadlift. So what you've got to do is try and synchronize as many motor units as possible to fire as rapidly as possible to make sure that the bar gets moving fast. Because if it moves slowly off the floor, you're dead. So speed pulls, something like 60% in week 1 for 8 sets of 2 reps, 65% for singles in week 2, and then 70% in singles for week 3, and then dropping back maybe 7.5% and repeating that sort of wave. The concentration you've got to make is accelerating each rep as hard as humanly possible while still holding good technique. From that, then, front squats and pause squats are an amazing way to improve your starting position. So getting to the bottom of a front squat or the bottom of a pause squat, holding on for 2 seconds and getting up again. Don't go crazy on the reps. Something like 5 sets of heavy doubles is a really good starting point on that. What I'm doing at the moment myself is 2 weeks of paused front squats, 5 sets of 2, 2 weeks of paused high bar back squats, 5 sets of 2, and then 2 weeks of paused safety bar squats, 5 sets of 2, and then repeating that over a 6-week cycle. So I'm kind of hitting every movement once every 6 weeks, and I'm looking to PR on the second day of that. If you're missing in the mid range, so from like the middle of your shin up to your knee, it's probably a rack pull or hamstring thing you need to do to fix that. Now, look, don't get me wrong. If your technique has gone to shit by this stage, there's no like muscular strengthening work in the world that's going to improve it. But assuming you've got to the middle of your shin or to your knees in a good position, then you probably need to start looking at hamstring strength. Okay. I'm going to see if I can find a couple of videos just to illustrate this point for you. Where are we going with this? Okay, I'm going to go onto my page. Here we go. Perfect. So a couple of months ago, I hit a really, really ugly 250. I actually think I missed it. Gym meet. So bear with me while I find this. Okay, so here it is. So the 240 moves pretty smoothly. I deleted it because I'm an absolute jerk. I was so upset with it I didn't even bother putting it in. Okay, I think this is it. No, it's not. Look, let's forget about it. I'm not going to be able to find it for you guys. I'll try and hook up pictures afterwards and show it to you. But basically what I was trying to show is that I was getting to like 3 inches below my knee and I was dying of death. To solve that, I started doing rack pulls from various positions and a lot of glute ham raises and stiff leg deadlifts, and I saw a big PR. So, if you're struggling there, get stronger hamstrings. Stronger hamstrings are never going to be a negative for you anyway. If at the top end you're struggling, a lot of the time it comes down to your start position being off. So like I said, if you go above your knees and you fall apart, chances are your hips are already extended and your lower back is trying to complete the lift. Failing that, some extra upper back work and heavy rows is usually a good avenue to go down to improve that. So back on to questions. Helen has said, I had a discussion with a trainer recently about resetting between reps. Should it always be a deadlift? Apparently in German, the name doesn't have dead in it, so it's hard to emphasize. Okay, I think if you want to pull the most weight possible and your goal is a big 1 rep max, then yeah, pulling most of your reps from a dead stop is the way to go. Whether or not you need to pull them as a cluster set like Michael was talking about, which is basically doing a rep, putting it down, completely standing up and resetting again, so doing like a rep every 30 seconds, that's a different story. But I would say do most of your reps from a dead stop and your deadlift will get stronger for it. Dan says thank you. Thank you, Dan. And lol, sorry, Helen, I'm just seeing you saying that I covered it already. No harm to emphasize it. Paul's asking, does training volume help with warming up at lighter weights? Not really too sure what you're asking there. Paul. If you can clarify for me, that'd be awesome. If not, I'll still take a stab at it. I have two questions to answer here. So, Paul, try and come back to me on that one and let me know what you mean. Yo, Connor, stop sending James abusive Snapchats because I'm going to beat you up if you do. I know where you live. Um, Anthony, I'm going to have to read this out because he's bigging me up. Anthony, no one can see this, so I'm going to read it out word for word. For anyone who hasn't trained with James, I can totally 100% back up this information. I hated deadlifts. On my own, I only ever squatted 80 kilos. Sorry, that's a lie. On his own, he only ever deadlifted 80 kilos. His first deadlift with me, after tweaking his start position, he pulled 135. He tested last week again, 175, up 40 kilos. The confidence I gained from James and Dara really helped me lift the heaviest I have in my life. My aim is a 200 kilo pull. 200 kilos is going to fall absolutely no problem for Anto. But that kind of that shows you how important it is, guys, to actually get your stuff looked at and to get your technique locked down. Because most people are leaving without even training probably 10% on the floor that they could pick up. So Anto, thanks for that, bro. I really appreciate the shout out, man. Paul's asking, okay, Paul, I understand now. Would pulling 10 reps in earlier sets with a lighter weight help for pulling bigger singles and doubles? Nah, absolutely not. So what Paul's kind of getting at is, will doing like sets of 8 to 10 reps as warm-ups help with heavier singles and doubles? Not really. It's very easy to pull singles and doubles and just make an absolute balls. It's very easy to pull reps and make a balls that have been not even realized. Like you could pull 60 kilos wrong all day, but as soon as you went to 100 kilos, 140 kilos, 200, whatever, then you're probably going to notice your technique breaking down. So I'd say if you're going to start pulling for warm-ups, set your warm-ups up like speed pulls. 60 kilos, 5 singles as explosively as possible. 80 kilos, do the same, and work up that way. It's so funny. You guys can't see the questions and the comments that are coming in, but there was a little bit of abuse I threw at somebody there. You probably didn't even pick it up. And James just said thank you. So no sweat, James. If you ever want me to say anything again to him, just let me know. I was asking, any use doing reverse hypers or glute ham raises as accessory exercises? If I was to pick two of my favorite accessory exercises for deadlifting, they would be it. So yes, absolutely. Do your glute ham raises, do your reverse hypers, get used to the movements and love them because they're your best friend when it comes to improving your deadlift. So let's talk about troubleshooting. For most people, fixing your start position is going to have the biggest effect. So just making sure that you're in the right position, because if you're not, two things happen. Number one, you fuck your back up, and number two, you pull yourself out of position and you don't get big and strong like you want. I can't think of a worse situation in my life than being really weak and injured. That's not cool. So make sure you start in the right position and make sure you're hammering rack pulls until you can do that. So if for whatever reason you can't get into a good start position on your deadlift, then just use a rack pull variation instead, while working on whatever issue you have to prevent you from getting into that position. Because if you start in a rack pull variation, you're still going to get a hell of a lot of hamstring and glute involvement. You're going to improve your grip strength. You're going to improve your upper back strength. Your lats are going to be working. Your traps are going to be working. You're going to understand the movement, and you're going to create this phenomenal stimulus for growth. If you're struggling with your deadlifts, pull everything from a dead stop. So the deadlift comes back into it. I know guys who pull a set of 5 on the deadlift, and then they'll add 5 kilos to the bar and they won't go anywhere because every rep after the first one is just this big bounce and heave. Connor just gave me a shout out as well. He said, don't mind Murray Ham. Sorry, James, I'm going to have to go with Connor on this one now. He's enjoying it. Excellent stuff. Better than listening to James. 200 kilos on the way. It sure is, buddy. One of the things I've started doing recently, I was first exposed to this like 4 or 5 years ago through Boris Shiko's programming, but using pauses at your knee. So anytime you create like a quasi isometric contraction in your weak point, it's a really good way to improve it. So like, let's say for most people bench pressing or squatting, if they pause at the bottom position or on their chest for 2 seconds and then drive out of it, they'll notice that their touch and go reps or their 1 rep maxes increase. Doing the same with the deadlift is a really good way to approach it as well. So basically what I mean by pausing at your knee is starting to lift off the floor, pulling it till it gets to like just below your kneecap, maybe an inch below, pausing there for a second before completing the lift. That only works if you're pulling with truly excellent technique though. And that means that only works if you're firing your lats up, supporting your lower back by firing your core and engaging it tight, and making sure that your glutes and hams are taking the load and not your lower back. So the pause at the knee is awesome. I know Alex Vida is doing it a lot as well these days, and he's a monster. But again, only if you can pull with truly excellent technique. This one is a little bit pun intentional, but rows will pull your deadlift along fast. So when it comes to deadlifting, a lot of the time people don't engage their lats very well. They don't have a strong enough upper back to hold a good starting position, and they're just not comfortable in that like transition area where the hamstrings are asked to work really hard. So when it comes to rowing, it's one of the most efficient ways to do that. It builds a huge amount of back strength. Your hamstrings are forced to support you, and your upper back and grip, if you're not using wraps, will improve too. So we got a couple more questions. Anderson says, I've answered all his questions. Thanks, man. James is coming back and saying band assisted Nordic curls is a good substitute instead of a GHR to build hamstring strength. Yeah, it is, James. So guys, a Nordic curl is basically getting somebody to hold your ankles while you do a manual leg curl. Obviously, that requires a huge amount of strength. So using a band to assist it is a really good option. Now, here's the thing, James, and here's what I think anyone who is a trainer or who owns a gym on this webinar needs to go and do. Go on to BMAC Strength. I swear to God, if he doesn't have it now, I'm going to go mad. So Google BMAC Strength, go into products, and I really, really hope he has this glute ham raise back in stock. Brian has this absolutely incredible piece of equipment. So the website is bmaxstrength.co.uk. If you can't find it on there, email him, tell him I sent you, and tell him you need one now. So it's a floor mounted GHR. So hey, there's my log on boards. So it's basically, I hope there's a picture of it now. It's pretty similar to this bad boy here. Okay, so it's a glute ham raise that just goes on the floor. And Brian was selling them for I think it was about €300. It's probably the best investment you could make in getting stronger. Because this is an amazing piece of kit, and it's helped my deadlift more than I can emphasize. So if you can get one, get one. If you can get it off Brian, and get it off Brian, because the stuff is really good and he's a really nice guy. When it comes to deadlifting, it's supposed to be heavy. Okay, it's all right if it feels like it's tough. If your position is right, if you're holding the right position and fighting hard, a heavy deadlift is probably like the biggest test of your mental fortitude there is. It's really easy to give up and just drop it on the ground. Nothing bad happens. You don't get crushed like you would with a squat or deadlift, or with a squat or bench press. So if you really want to test out how strong you are and how much mental resilience and fortitude you have, load up a heavy bar, hold a good position, and keep pulling that sucker. Pull it until it takes 4 or 5 seconds to complete it. If you can do that, you'll know exactly what a heavy deadlift truly feels like. Mark, just a reminder, I want to train with you, just helping, and I appreciate you taking the time to do it. Mark, email me right now, james@revolutionfitness.ie, and I'll get you in before the week is out, okay? And there's a couple of people who are dropping out and going on holidays this month, so I'll give you their spot. So email me right now, james@revolutionfitness.ie. You're top of my list, bro. Lloyd, dude, thanks for tuning in. Okay, so that's all the information. We're going to go into a Q&A in a couple of minutes. But first, I just want to tell you about a little powerlifting seminar that I'm running in the gym. So the biggest thing that I hope came across on this is there's so much you can do to improve your lifting right now. Okay, if you've been stuck at a level for months, for years, if you're constantly picking up injuries, if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to improve, if you're sitting there pissed off and frustrated at your lack of progress, you probably need some coaching. And it's what I do, and it's what I do really, really well. So on the 23rd and 24th of August, I'm running a powerlifting seminar in RevFit. It's going to be 3.5 hours per day. To be honest, it's probably going to be closer to 4 or 5. Just purely because once I start talking about this sort of stuff, I completely get away with myself. Day one, we're going to focus on mobility work, so identifying your issues and your imbalances and creating a plan and template off of that specifically for you. Then we're going to do some squat technique work and some squat testing. So we're going to learn how to set up correctly for a squat, learn how to perform the lift, talk about how to train the lift, and then we're going to test it. In testing it, what we're going to see is where your issues lie. So everybody has different problems, and you only ever see the issue as it gets heavier. Like anyone can do a pretty squat with 60 kilos. It's not that hard. You want to see where somebody really struggles, put them up at 80%, put them up a little bit higher. So what we'll be doing there is working up to a technical max. So something that is technical failure for you, where your technique starts to break down. Day two is going to be bench press and deadlift technique. So I'm going to be running a couple more webinars over the next 2 weeks. So 2 Mondays from now, which is the bank holiday, I think, not too sure. But basically, not Monday coming, the Monday after that will be the bench press webinar, and 2 weeks after that we'll have a squat webinar. I'll post up links and stuff afterwards. But we're going to do some bench press technique, some deadlift technique. We're going to test both lifts up to a max and see where you're at. And again, it only happens when you go up towards 80% that you really start to see issues. And then on day one and day two, we're going to look at special assistance exercises for both of these lifts. So again, working on identifying what your biggest flaw is and the sort of lift you can bring in to improve that. It's going to be a 16-week training cycle off the back end of it. So because this is towards the end of August, that's basically going to take you through to 2015. So you've got your training for the rest of the year covered off if you come along to it. Cost-wise, it's going to be €297 for the weekend, and I'm only taking 10 people on it. The reason I'm only taking 10 people on it is because I care more about the quality of the work we do than trying to get a little bit of extra cash. Okay, I can't emphasize that enough. What we need to have on this workshop is a lot of hungry wolves who are dedicated to getting stronger and to doing this right. Okay, it can't just be about coming in, kicking some tires and seeing what happens. So if you want to come along to this, and I've already got 4 guys who are kind of tentatively committed, I need you to email me right now to james@revolutionfitness.ie. Tell me you're in, and I'll get you booked up. So again, that's 2 days of powerlifting technique. It says 3.5 hours. To be honest, it's way more likely to be 4 or 5 hours. And we're going to cover the essential mobility work you need to do and how to warm up safely and effectively, how to squat properly, how to hit PRs, and what work you need to do to improve your own lift. Same with bench press and deadlift, how to set up correctly, how to stabilize your shoulders, how to limit the risk of shoulder injury, and set up like a powerlifter to hit PRs. And then deadlift technique, basically covering off all the stuff we've done on this, and making sure you can smash some PRs. So 16-week training cycle, that's basically programmed up to 2015 for you. It's only €297 for whatever it is, 8 to 10 hours of knowledge. And I'm limiting to 10 people because I want to make sure that you guys get the most value possible out of it. So remember, email me to, I'll put it up here right now. Email me to james@revolutionfitness.ie right now. The first 10 people who get in touch will get it. Simple. So I've got a couple of questions I want to cover back off. Wow, there's a lot of questions. Guys, I've got to check when my food's going to be ready because Sarah is very kindly prepping some stuff for me. How much longer do we have? Half an hour. Oh, guys, she just said we've 20 minutes to half an hour before I need to go and eat. So that means I've basically 20 minutes to half an hour of Q&A time with you guys. So Lloyd said, thank you very much. Lloyd, thanks for coming on, man. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen in. Graham is asking, what is a good substitute for glute ham raises if you don't have a glute ham raise facility? To be honest, dude, there isn't really much that adequately covers it off. You could potentially use, see if I can find this GHR on, oh god, GHR on lat pull down. So I have never watched this video. I'm going to just try and see if it's a good one. Basically, you're doing pretty much, who else hates these Google ads, by the way? You're pretty much doing what is a glute ham raise because your ankles are locked in. You just don't have a toe pad to drive back into. Yeah, this is a pretty good option right here, man. Very cleverly, this dude is using a Bosu ball to push himself back up out of the hardest position. So if you don't have a glute ham raise, personally, I'd like to see his hips extended a little bit more. You know, better alignment between ankle, knee, hip here, and then shoulder. But look, that's neither here nor there. This is a good option. That's where I'd go with it. James, you're going to go look it up? Please do, man. Don's asking, is a floor-mounted GHR better than a regular GHR, or is it just cheaper and more mobile? I prefer it, man. If I had the choice and I had an unlimited amount of cash, I'd always buy floor-mounted for that sort of stuff. Two reasons. Number one, with the floor-mounted one, you can do this sort of assistance work a lot easier. So you can push off the floor. You're less likely to face plant and headbutt the deck, and you're actually forced to do it right. Let's see if we can find a GHR done wrong. God, this doesn't help. Glute ham, raise, extension. Okay. I have no idea if I'm going to find somebody doing this wrong or not. I'm going to just pick the first one I see. This looks like it's going to be done wrong. So, what you should have with a good glute ham raise is a stop. And again, look, please note that Jordan here is saying he's doing it with momentum, so he knows exactly what he's doing. But if you're doing a strict glute ham raise, what you'd have is stop in that position, in this near fully extended position, because now all you've got are glutes and hams to pull yourself back up. But as an assistance movement, or kind of as a I don't know, as a compensation for lack of strength, you can hinge into it a little bit, extend your back, and fire yourself up. Hinge in, extend up, and bang. The problem with that is most people naturally come towards this movement anyway, and it's a really, to be honest, it's really shit. Like, people don't even realize they're doing this. Whereas if you're doing it on a floor-mounted GHR, you'd know very quickly you're doing it because you'd headbutt the floor. And yeah, they're also cheaper and they're more mobile. That's why I like them as well. Anto's heading off, dude. Very happy to have you here, and thank you very much for all your good questions. Graham, oh man, he's been waiting for me to do something, but he's getting married on the 22nd, so he can't make it. Dude, email me to james@revolutionfitness.ie anyway, and I'll sort something out for you. Like, if we do some one-to-one stuff, that we'll do that, but I'll definitely get you doing something. We could probably run through something similar to what is planned on obviously a day that's not your wedding. Or you could just have your wedding in my gym, the Church of Strength. Michael runs similar workshops to mine, so he enjoyed hearing my thoughts. Dude, absolute pleasure having you here. If you do rob anything off me, just credit me. That's all I ask. I've robbed pretty much all my information anyway. There's nothing new in training, guys. There's only like one or two new things come out every year. But the important thing is to absorb what's useful, discard what is useless. Dude, that's going to get me in trouble. James has said he needs a woman like that who brings him food. Man, I cook for her just as much as she cooks for me, if not more often. And my food's nicer as well, but don't tell her I said that. Don, can't make the August seminar, but wants to get me to run one in his place. Ability, terms, thanks. Don, dude, I'm coming to Galway for you. Guys, anyone who wants to know, I'm up in Roscommon on the 9th of August in Strong Life Gym. I'm probably going to get down to Don's place in Galway sometime in September. So what else have we got? Ian, like every session he's learned a ton. Cheers, buddy. Yoga. Oh, yeah, okay. Al's turned out an idea using a yoga ball as a glute ham raise with the legs braced work well, but they're awkward. Yeah, I think that's a funny gym moment video just waiting to happen. John, fascinating. See you Wednesday. See you then, mate. Hopefully we can smash your chest and upper body out of it. Gar, yeah, we're going to have this up on YouTube afterwards with a Q&A. Guys, anyone who wants to ask questions, keep going with them. I've still got a few minutes before my food's ready. Um, Michael and Eam both said I need Google ad blocker. Yeah, definitely, man. I'm getting sick of them at this stage. Nessa, thanks. I'll see you on Wednesday as well. Mark, Mike Robertson has a quick video on GHRs or Robinson. I assume that's Robertson, bro. Yeah. Um, oh, he's linked it. Okay, chill out for a sec, guys. Ian saying thanks for the webinar. On sets of 5, I sometimes don't breathe as well as possible. Should I just breathe in between reps, or what's best? So, do you breathe in between sets, or do you not? I think if you're pulling 5 reps, you're going to need to breathe at some point. I if I'm pulling multiple reps on the deadlift, I'm taking a breath between each set just to let some of that preload and stretch reflex dissipate, so it becomes a more true deadlift sort of movement. So yeah, take a breath between reps. Just make sure you rebrace and lock up tight. Chris, great webinar. Got to head to a meeting at 8:05. Fired in the morning. Okay, dude. Hopefully you don't get fired. Okay, so Mark has supplied this video on glute ham raises from, it's either Mike Robinson or Mike Robertson. Let's see who it is now. Yeah, it's Mike Robertson. Okay, guys, I'm not going to play this now because I don't want to watch something I haven't watched before while you're here. But if you go onto YouTube and type in Mike Robertson, GHR, or was it glute ham raise? Yeah, there she is. Look, you've got it. So Mike Robertson, glute ham raise, if you want to watch that video, dudes. Lindsay, hells yeah, we're going to get you strong. Lindsay just pulled her first 100 kilo deadlift recently, guys. At this stage, I've completely lost count of the number of girls in the gym who've got a double bodyweight deadlift, or sorry, a 100 kilo plus deadlift. Al, thanks, mate. Enjoy your weekend. Don, yeah, let's do it in September, man. James, I would absolutely love to come down to Longford. Guys, I've been saying this again and again. I said at the start, my number one goal right now is just to help people, to help as many people as I possibly can, and to do it to the best of my abilities. So, James, please shoot me a mail right now to james@revolutionfitness.ie. I'll come down to Longford, I'll do the workshop for you, and we'll all go out in the piss afterwards. Stu, thanks for checking in, man. He just said he wanted to step in and say thanks. He appreciates it. Thanks for tuning in, Stu. I do appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do it. Al, off to deadlift. Enjoy, bro. Pete, do let me know. Please let me know how you're getting on with your new setup. And Graham, happy days. Enjoy your deadlifting. Guys, any more questions? I'm going to give you 60 seconds. Shout them out now or forever hold your peace. Whoa, okay. Anto, be good, mate. Thanks. Ian, thanks, buddy. Michael, no worries, mate. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for those positive words, Luke. Enjoy yourself, mate. Dan, enjoy yourself, man. Be good. James, awesome. I can't wait. I'm really excited about that one. Paul, put them into action. Make it work. Ian, sleep tight. Oh, man. Darren, you're going to miss the Strong Life Winkage of a wedding. Look, if it's not yours, don't go. Better off learning how to be strong. Don, talk soon, bro. Shane, delighted to have you on, man. Okay, guys, we are cutting it there. I hope you enjoyed this. I had an absolute blast. The squat one and the bench press one are going to be coming up in 2 weeks' time and 4 weeks' time, respectively. All right. Peace out. Again, if you want to come to that event, email me on james@revolutionfitness.ie and I'll get you booked on. Okay. Peace out, guys. Thank you.